Yeah, I am happy to be here. I know we're at time right now, so let's jump right on into our Pear Deck 201 today. So I'm sure a few of you were in our 101 session the other day, or you have already kind of learned your way around Pear Deck and kind of have a great understanding of how you can actually create and implement Pear Deck in your classroom. In our 201 today, we're going to cover some of the more advanced features that you'll find in your Pear Deck premium license here and how you can leverage these features in the classroom to, like I was talking about yesterday, create that connection with your students, create that community in your classroom, and just all around how to get insight into how your students are progressing in your class. Quick little intro of myself. My name is Brittany Dykes, and I am a customer success manager over here at GoGuardian, also known as Pear Deck. And I am pumped to dive into our webinar today because learning these deeper features and learning how we can continue to help our students grow in the classroom is always just a joy to chat about. So we're actually just going to jump right into a Pear Deck lesson here. So I will launch our Pear Deck add-on and then launch this presentation as a Pear Deck presentation. To get to our add-on, if we look at our Google Slides toolbar up here, I'm just going to click add-ons, go over to Pear Deck for Google Slides add-on, and then I'm going to open up that add-on. As we covered yesterday, we have a ton of content over here in our little sidebar. We have our template library, as well as a direct link to our content orchard. We have our 6 different interactive slide types, the ability to add audio to our slide, and just some featured content down here as well. Today, like I said, we're just going to jump right into our Pear Deck lesson. So to do that, I will click this green Start Lesson button. It will prompt me to either launch a student paced activity, which is completely asynchronous. Our students are working independently at their own pace, or the instructor paced activity, which is synchronous. I, as the teacher, will be leading the pace of this slideshow today or this presentation today, and you all will see the exact slides that I am looking at on our projector view. So let's jump into our synchronous mode here. And like we talked about yesterday, this little pop-up, our teacher dashboard, does pop up for me. And today we're actually going to dive a little bit deeper into what we can actually do in our teacher dashboard beyond just seeing what our students are submitting and seeing their thought process. So I'm going to move that one off our screen. But as we work through some of these interactive slides, I'm going to pull it back over so we can talk about some of the bigger features there. So let's move that. To prompt and encourage our students to join, we could just ask them to go to joinpd.com right here and type in this 6-letter code, or you can give your students a link here. So if you wanted to share that link out via Canvas, you can do that as well. Or again, just encouraging your students to go to joinpd.com and type in this 6-letter code. I highly recommend everyone actually jump into this presentation here today because there are a few things at the end once we wrap up our session that I want to be able to share out with you so you can see what it looks like for your students and just get an understanding of how you can continue the lesson after your Pear Deck session is done. So I will reshare this link in the chat again and encourage you all to go to joinpd.com and type in BUNZKT. Something I want to point out here is I can click this continue button right here. And even though we are in our Pear Deck lesson right now, say if a student joins in late or their internet was wonky and they got kicked out of the session, all they have to do is look in this top right-hand corner and go to joinpd.com and type in this 6-letter code here. You could also make that big again so your students see it once more in case they need to see that in a larger font. You could always grab that link for your students. Another item that I like to point out here is if your teacher dashboard does not automatically open up for you, it is totally fine. All you will do is click this button right here that says Open Teacher Dashboard. Once you click that, your teacher dashboard will open up and you can have eyes on that. So I see that we have 8 students connected. Again, I definitely encourage you all to join this lesson today so that you can experience what it is like to continue the lesson even after we end our Pear Deck session. I will be joining in as a student as well so that we can highlight some of the student view items here. So let me actually finish answering that. And let's jump on in. So this right here is an example of our drawing slide type. And I always like to throw this in here because these are actual quotes from educators. And this is why they love using Pear Deck in the classroom. I think one of the biggest things that I think is really important and a really key feature about Pear Deck is having the ability to check in with students as you're delivering more complex problems in the classroom, and then being able to give immediate feedback. So as you're seeing your students answer this question, and maybe you see a student that they were on the right track, but then maybe veered off just a little bit, you can send immediate feedback to that student to help get them back on track so that they get to the right answer. And I can show a quick example of that. So if you would like, you can go through this drawing slide here and highlight some of the things that stand out to you. What are some key things that these educators are saying that you're like, absolutely, I love that I can do that in my classroom, or I can't wait to start using this tool so that I can do it in the classroom. And like I said, this one's a big one for me. So I'm actually just going to give it a big old circle right here. All right. And looking back at our projector view here, we can show our responses. So if I click show responses here, we're looking at our overlay or our list view here. So we get to see each answer come in one at a time. We can take a look at our grid layout here. We get to see more answers coming in. We could always choose our overlaid layout as well so that we have all of the answers on one screen here. So if I go back to our grid layout, I'm actually going to pull this teacher dashboard right on over to showcase what I mean about being able to send our students immediate feedback as soon as we see maybe that they're veering off the wrong path. They had the concept and then they just took a left turn. We have these little features down here, these little icons, and they allow you to interact with your students. So this little button right here, the little quote bubble, that's how we can send that feedback in a way that doesn't call a student out in front of the whole classroom. So I see Brittany here, she circled this one, and I can leave that feedback and say, this is a favorite for me too. So I'll send that feedback. I see that that feedback has been sent to Brittany. And if I take a quick little look at our student view here, it says right now that I have new feedback from my teacher. So if I click on that little bubble right there, I can see what my teacher has said to me. So again, if we're working a complex math problem or we're highlighting things in a passage, I can see that feedback and then adjust to the correct answer, or maybe just ponder and think about it and see where the mistake might have been so that I can course correct on my own learning journey. Jumping back over here to our view, our projector view, I want to highlight once again, like I did yesterday, that all of these responses are anonymous. So as I am sharing these responses out to all of my students on our projector view, and we're having a class discussion about all of these wonderful answers, no one feels called out in any particular way because all of these answers are shown anonymously. You get insight on your teacher dashboard as to what each of your students are saying and their thought process. So this teacher dashboard is for your eyes only because you get to see the student's name and again, how they're processing, how they're thinking about some of these questions. So I think it's super important that you have your teacher dashboard open, you get eyes on this so that you have that information to be able to see, oh, after this formative assessment question that I presented, I now have two groups of students, those that might need extra help on this concept and those that are ready to move on to the next thing. So maybe we give extra practice, independent practice to those students that need a little bit of extra help. And then we can let our other students that are ready to move on to the next concept, giving them that information so that they can proceed forward. So that's just something that I think is pretty powerful about our teacher dashboard here. It's giving you that insight in the middle of your lesson so you know how to continue to interact with your students and help them achieve their best. All right, so we'll hide our responses here and I'll actually take us through our agenda today. That was just a step, a little drop in the bucket, if you will, about what we'll be covering today. So we're going to learn more about the Pear Deck features that you have. We're also going to talk about the shared teacher dashboard. Then we're going to explore what to do after we end our Pear Deck session. And then of course, we'll open it up to a Q&A. If we have time, very much time permitting, we'll highlight some of the things that you would find in your Pear Deck homepage here. where you can access your previous sessions, where that content orchard is, and some of the settings that you have at your disposal here within your profile. So let's go on through this. Just a little caveat here, these slides are a little text heavy because we really wanted to explain why we built some of these features and how you can actively utilize this to, again, create that sense of class community. So the first one I wanted to chat about is our shared teacher dashboard. So that's basically you're creating a dashboard and an opportunity for a co-teacher to join in on your lesson today. So if you have a paraprofessional that's joining in to help certain students, or even in general, if you have a co-teacher in the classroom or a student teacher, whatever it may be, you can actually give them access to the teacher dashboard so that they can provide an extra set of eyes, some extra hands for support for your students. So let's actually demonstrate what that would look like. So on this slide, you can write in a response if you would like to, just to share out your name. This is our open response slide type, so you can just have some fun with that. And I'm going to pull our teacher dashboard right on over here. So again, I get to see the student names and their responses to this question. Just wanted to highlight that they're, again, giving me that insight. If I wanted to share this teacher dashboard with a co-teacher or paraprofessional, or even maybe a substitute teacher because I started an asynchronous lesson for my students and I am out of school that day, all I would have to do is click on this class roster here. So I can open that up. I'll see all of my wonderful students in my lesson today. Then I can click over to teachers. Once I do that, this button right here pops up and it allows me to invite a co-teacher. So I would click that, I would grab this link, and then I would share it with the person that I would like to share this dashboard with. Another way that we can invite a co-teacher is just by clicking the 3 dots on our teacher dashboard and going invite a co-teacher. And again, we get that link to share out with our co-teacher here. Something I like to point out is that your co-teacher has the same access that you have on the teacher dashboard. So your co-teacher will also be able to leave feedback for students. They will be able to see the names associated with the answers. They have access to changing the layout here as well. They also have the ability to change the slide. So this is one of those things that I always recommend maybe having a conversation with your co-teacher, especially if you're doing a synchronous lesson. Because if they click the navigation arrows down here, it's going to go to the next slide for everyone. So maybe if you're launching a synchronous lesson and you have a co-teacher, maybe designating who's going to be in charge of the pace of today's lesson and who should be monitoring student answers, getting those extra eyes on there and getting the giving the support students may need throughout this lesson. Another item that I want to point out here that I'm sure you're all seeing this star right next to some of these answers here, and you're wondering what that does for your students or in your Pear Deck presentation in general. If we, before we're showing out answers here, so we're not showing answers on our projector view there, if we highlight a few answers here by starring them, now when I show those responses, we will only see those responses that I have starred. So this is a great one if we have maybe differing views, just how people go about answering something, and we kind of want to highlight that and create a class discussion. We can highlight a few of those answers and then project it on our projector view and allow our students to have a classroom discussion around it. And I actually need to move this so I can actually grab my teacher dashboard again. And if we ever needed to clear out some of these stars, you could just click the star again and again, it immediately adjusts on our projector view, and we can clear all the stars to allow everyone's answers to be there. So it's great if while you're talking about this concept with your students and they're answering this question, maybe your co-teacher comes through here and highlights some of those exceptional answers that you want to have a discussion about. And then when you show responses, everything is ready to go. Another option that I wanted to highlight here in our teacher dashboard is the ability to hide a response. Sometimes students are a little off task and we don't want them to distract anyone else in our class, right? The best thing that we could do here would be to, before we're showing responses, click those 3 dots and click hide response. Heidi, I'm sorry for picking on you, but I had to hide your response for this example. And so now we'll see that Heidi's response is no longer here. Once we do that, maybe I want to send Heidi some feedback and say, hey, just to let you know that I'm aware, I can see this. Let's maybe readjust and stay focused on and be on task. they fix their answer, everything's perfect and beautiful, we can bring back the response and then they will be shown here again. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, if we have our shared teacher or our co-teacher dashboard open, our co-teacher can be looking through these responses before we share them and making sure that we are sharing appropriate responses to all of our students. The next feature here that we have is our lock timer. And this is actually something we touched on a little bit yesterday because I was excited to talk about it. But building in this time for our students to process is just a really great way to build that trust with our students. We're saying we're going to give them 30 seconds. We're saying we're going to give them X amount of time to be able to complete this task. And it gives them a sense of, okay, I am aware of how much time I have left in order to complete some of these tasks. So on our next slide here, if you remember from yesterday, or if you're just an expert and you know it off the top of your head, feel free to utilize this drawing slide here to tell me, one, how you would actually open up your timer modal here, and then the 3 time options that we have. And so you can just draw in here, no worries if you don't have the actual answer. It's super duper low stakes, and you can always readjust once we share out what the actual numbers are. Something else that I like to think about when I'm thinking about the lock timer here is that it helps with classroom management. I know sometimes there are moments where we're like, okay, we have X amount of time to work on this, and then time just flies by. You get lost in something else, and sometimes it can be a little hard to get back on track once we hit that groove. But if we're utilizing these timers, it gives us a chance to make sure that we're staying on track. Again, that classroom management and building in that focus time with our students. And we got some answers here. Thank you so much. We'll show responses. And if we come over here to our overlay layout, we can see everyone working. And yes, you're right. That lock screens button is what is going to get us to this timer over here. And I see it. We have 30 seconds, 1 minute, and 3 minutes. We got some experts out there. And so you could always, since we're on this drawing slide here, readjust. So you can erase some answers if you need to, and then write in the correct 30 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes here. And so on our next slide, I can actually showcase what that timer would look like for our students. All right, so we'll pop on over. So this is another drawing slide type. It's the name tag I used from yesterday. You can just have some fun and draw a fun picture, and I'll start our timer. So to start this timer, I'm going to do a long press on our lock screens button. So I click it and I hold it for just a second, and the timer pops up. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes. I'll give us 30 seconds here, and you all can draw your wonderful masterpieces on your name tag over here. And as you can see, we have the timer countdown on our projector view. We also have it on our student view. So as a student, I see that I have 15 seconds, and maybe I'm just going to draw some squigglies real quick. Maybe I could do a sun in 9 seconds. We'll see. Kind of, we almost got it. All right. And once we did all of that, our screens lock. I see my response here, but I can no longer make edits on this slide. So if I come back to our projector view, and now when I show our responses and our overlaid view, we have everyone's wonderful work plastered on top of one another. Again, we could go to that grid layout so we can see everyone's individual name tags and artistry as well. And so thank you all for drawing some little fun pictures here. I love this. So this just allows our students to have a chance to understand how much time they have left to work on something and what they need to do in order to accomplish and meet that timer. I would say another great thing about having your teacher dashboard open is that you can see if your students need more time on something. So if that timer is getting close to that 10-second mark and you know Brittany is drawing the best sun that she possibly could and you want to give her some extra time, you could always come back here and add on that time again so your students have more time to work on something. So that's a huge perk to having your teacher dashboard open. And so you have the eyes on what your students are working on, and you can judge whether or not they need a little bit more time to work on something. All right. We'll unlock everyone's screens, and we'll go to our next feature here, which is our quick checks for understanding. So I'm sure many of you experienced this. I know I've been part of the experience as well. When a teacher, you're doing your best, you teach this amazing concept, you think you nailed it, you turn around and you ask your students a question and it's just blank stares coming back at you. And it's one of those moments where you're just like, all right, so maybe we didn't all just absorb this concept, or maybe our students are just in a weird funk and they don't feel like raising their hands to give us a quick little answer so we can see where they're at. This is where the quick checks for understanding comes in. So we can have a impromptu formative assessment check with our students to make sure that we're all on the same page and ready to move to the next concept. Or if we need to take some time to go over and explore the concept we just talked about. So this is a little check to see if you've ever used this concept before. So circle the icon that opens up the formative assessments or the quick checks for understanding. Again, this is something that you do not have to know off at the top of your head. It's just a chance to see if you've had a chance to explore this feature within Pear Deck. Awesome, awesome. And we're getting responses coming in, and y'all are right. I'm going to quickly show responses here and we'll do the overlaid layout. It is that new prompt button right in that bottom right-hand corner right there. It says new prompt. It has a little slide with a little plus on it. So you're probably, sometimes I forget how to speak. I get a little tongue-tied and I do apologize. So you're probably wondering what that actually looks like. So this is actually a website slide type, and it takes you to a help article that shows off what the new prompt button looks like. But I'm also just going to show it to you in real time. So like I said, this is a website slide type, but maybe we just went through this concept and I feel like maybe we need to have a deeper discussion about it. And so what I can do is add in a new prompt or new interactivity on this slide. So if I click our new prompt button here, we have our template slides that pop up. So I can always insert one of these template slides and just verbalize the question to my students so that they can then respond. And then I can have a check by looking at our teacher dashboard or even showing off responses on the projector view to get an idea if we're ready to move to the next concept. So we have a couple of pages of that. So we have those template slides. We have this template slide as well. And then we have the ability to use the current content that is on that slide, but just change the interactivity. So maybe instead of just having it as a website slide type, I want to make this an open response slide. And I want our students to type out the concept or give me their own definition of what this new prompt feature looks like. If I hover over here to our text slide type, if I click that, now you have the ability to actually type in an open response to this. So I would say, you can now give me the definition or what you perceive the new prompt feature is like. And on my student view, it went from being a website slide type to this slide here. Now, if you ever needed to just go back to that website slide type to give your students a chance to look at that website once again, all you have to do is click that back arrow. And now we are back. I forgot that we updated. I need to update this slide. I'll actually send you all an updated link. We updated our help article pages, and this is an old website slide type. So I will be sure to follow up with that with the correct link here. But this would open up to the help article page. We still have our website slide type. I prompt my students and I ask the question, in your own words, define new prompt. And on that next slide, we still see that content there, and my students can provide an answer here. Great. Our next feature that I wanted to highlight is our immersive reader feature. So this is a teacher-enabled functionality, but it is a button that a student would actually click on and utilize in your Pear Deck lesson. And so immersive reader is just one of those tools that we've partnered with Microsoft and actually getting this into Pear Deck so that you can allow students who maybe need a little bit of extra help, that accessibility, whatever they may need, they have this feature that allows them to participate and be a part of this lesson in an equitable way. So like I said, it is a teacher-enabled button. So if you would go to your Pear Deck homepage here, so I went to peardeck.com and I clicked teacher login and I logged in as a teacher. I would click my email address up here. I would go to my account and then I would go to settings. And then right here is that immersive reader setting. So I would want to make sure that that is toggled on if this is a feature that I want my students to have access to. So right here, it is toggled on, and I can showcase how your students would actually utilize this feature in the classroom. So if we jump over to this slide here, feel free to answer the question if you would like. I'm just using this slide as a way to kind of show off how you would utilize that immersive reader feature in the class. So if I'm looking at my student view here, I'm looking at this question, I see our slide here, I see my ability to actually respond to this slide. And in the bottom right-hand corner, I see that immersive reader button. It's a book with the little audio icon on it. So if I click that immersive reader feature, it takes us to this page here. So if I needed to, I could play this for myself.
Which option is your favorite Pear Deck interactive question type? Why?
I can also do some text changes, so I can make this font a little bit bigger if I need it to be bigger. I can increase that spacing, which it already is. We could also change the colors here and create contrast if our students need that in order to see what is in front. We have our grammar options here, so we have the ability to break this into different parts of speech. But the biggest thing is the reading preferences. So we can turn on line focus, so it means that we would break it down one by one. So if we come here, we're doing a single line focus. So as a student, I can look at one line at a time, and we can have that toggled off. We have the ability to have a picture dictionary. So that means when I click on one of these objects or one of these words here, it's going to show me the word and it'll give me a picture that I can associate with that word. And then we have the ability to translate this text. So this is great for our English language learners as they're kind of getting their feet under them. They can still translate some of this text. So again, we're creating an equitable environment for all of our students to be able to participate in our lesson today. So if we go down here and I'll just choose Spanish, we can translate it by word. So I can go through here and click one by one to see what the word is, or we can translate the entire document. And now that it's translated, I can still have it played.
¿Qué opción es tu tipo de pregunta interactiva favorita de Pear Deck? ¿Por qué?
And so now as a student, I know the question and I can come back here to provide my answer to my teacher. So that is just a huge feature that we have here because we want this tool to be accessible to all. We want to create that equity in the classroom. So again, if you want to enable this feature, all you have to do is go to peardeck.com, log into your teacher login, go to your settings by clicking your email address, my account, clicking settings, and you'll find it right here, and you just have to toggle it on. Once you toggle it on, it'll be on until you turn it off, and it will apply to all of your Pear Deck sessions. I know it's a huge tool. I think it's just one of those things that it was something that needed to be done, and accessibility is a huge thing for Pear Deck. And I know our product team has been talking about other ways to make this tool more accessible to all of our students. So be on the lookout as we have more product updates coming soon.
Well, and yeah, just to pair, Brittany, this is free for all Iowa teachers because the state has prioritized this. And so I think it's, if we want to keep it as teachers, we also want to really encourage them to use it as well. So yeah, talk about UDL, which our whole feature speaker yesterday was UDL. This is huge for that. So knocking down barriers. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I loved it. All right. And so right here is our reflect and review feature. So this is a newer feature that we have here, and it's very similar. If you've ever worked with student takeaways, it's very similar to our student takeaways, except it lives within the Pear Deck UI. So this is one of those things that I'm actually going to show you all once we end our session today. But I just wanted to make sure that we had the definition in here so that you had an understanding of what reflect and review is and how you can continue the lesson once we end a Pear Deck session here today. So to actually access reflect and review, all you would have to do is click on the three dots here, and you would either click in session here, or you would just click in session right here. And once we do that, I'll actually show you what the screens look like before we end the session. Jump over here, it'll prompt you to name your session. And then it'll open up this page here where you can share this link directly with your students, and they will be able to open up their own reflect and review. You as the teacher will have access to all of the students' reflect and reviews, but each student will only have access to their own. So this is great as a study guide, thinking about after the lesson, wanting to review that work for the big test that's coming up Friday, or even just giving our students a chance to think about the work that they have submitted, and maybe they want to utilize this slide deck for their homework as an assist. So now they have a chance to review what they did in class, how they answered in class, and how they worked through problems, and take that learning and apply it to that homework at home. And so I know there's probably the question of, is there a limit to how many times you can access that reflect and review link, or even sharing that out to your students? And the answer is no. You have access to that link, and you're able to access it as many times as you would like, as many times as you need to. And you can reshare that link with your students. Maybe one of your kids forgot to save the link, they didn't bookmark it, or they lost access to it. You could always reshare that link with your students so that they can jump into their reflect and review. And there are other ways to access your reflect and review through, of course, your sessions page, as well as if you wanted to open up your old teacher dashboard after you've ended the session, you can go to reflect and review there. And I'll show all of this. I know we're coming up on time, so I'm just trying to make sure I hit all the highlights here for everyone. And then I'm going to show you how to actually access all of this. The other option that you have is your student takeaways, which is an individualized live Google document that contains a copy of all the slides from this presentation, as well as the student responses. Again, each student only has access to their own. You have access to all of the student takeaways. And so this is one where at the end of the day, it depends on what works best for you. Reflect and review and student takeaways contain the same information. It's honestly which one works best for you that you want to utilize in your classroom. So in order to access either of these, all we have to do, like I said earlier, is end our session here. Once we end it, we can just write our little title here. We'll save and end the session, and this page pops up here. So I'm going to grab this link, and for everyone that has joined today's session, if you click that link that is in the chat, it will take you to your own personal reflect and review. And I'm actually going to open it on my end as well. So this is my student reflect and review. So I am only going to see what I have submitted. So this is all of my teacher's entire slide deck, as well as my responses to it. That feedback that my teacher sent me is still on this slide, so I can still see it. And we can click through and review this as needed. And if I come back over here, I can actually open the reflect and review as a teacher to show off what that would look like for our teachers. So this is what the teacher view looks like. You would come here, you will select a student, and then again, you get to see all of the slides as well as the student response. And if you need to leave additional feedback for that student, all you have to do is click the leave feedback button and then leave more feedback for your student. And if I do that again, we'll just say that and send that feedback. If I pop over here for my student, it gives me another notification saying I have new feedback, and it tells me exactly which slide it's on, and I can just click go to slide, and then I can see my teacher's feedback here as well. And then our student takeaways here, you generate that just by clicking the little Google Docs button right here, generate takeaways. It's going to tell you and ask you if you're ready to publish takeaways. The biggest thing here is that you would want to make sure that this takeaway that you're going to send, that all of your students have completed or have signed into that presentation so they can actually get the student takeaways. You can only generate these takeaways once for your students. So again, you would want to make sure that all of your students have joined this presentation so that they can receive their student takeaway. So if I say publish takeaways for this session, two things are going to happen. One, in your inbox, you will receive an email that lets you know that you have access to your personalized student takeaway. Teachers can also share this link out with students. It does still, if you share the link out directly, it takes a little while for that to populate for our students, but once you receive the email, that link will also work. And if you're utilizing Google Classroom, you could always share to Google Classroom just by clicking that button there as well. So once we do that, we can close all of this out. I can exit this lesson, and it takes me right back to Google Slides. If I ever need it to pop in, maybe I need to go back to that reflect and review as a teacher. If I jump into my Pear Deck homepage here and I go to my sessions, and I'll refresh this page, we'll see the session that I just closed and ended. And if I needed to access that reflect and review again, I just click the three dots right there, click reflect and review, and then open reflect and review. Great. Another plug that I want to throw out, and this is something new that our team has been working on, is our content orchard. So we're trying to get as much content as possible out to you all, because sometimes it's a lot easier to work off of a template slide and edit it to fit your needs. And so we're trying to bring in more of that content for you all to have access to. So when you log into your peardeck.com account and you click on Content Orchard, we have all of these options up here. These are the buckets that we have. And of course, you can scroll through and take a look at all of the templates that we have to offer. And all of these templates, you could just grab them, insert them into whatever Pear Deck presentation you want to have, or just launch it directly from there just to check in with our students. And you have access to all of this. So it's just a great way to grab something quickly and keep your students engaged. Great. So that is the end of our 201 session. I think it is the end of our 201 session, but I'm looking at this page now and there's a quick little button that I want to show off. We were talking about our quick prompt feature a little bit earlier, and the launch a quick prompt button is also located in your Pear Deck homepage here as well. So say you aren't using Google Slides for your presentation, you didn't create a Pear Deck presentation, but you want to have a quick check-in with your students. All you have to do is click launch a quick prompt here that is in your Pear Deck homepage, and it opens up that same page where you get to choose a slide, the join code is there, and your students can respond. So as I was looking at it, I felt I should point it out in our 201 session here today. But yes, that is the conclusion of our Pear Deck 201. And I know we have some time left, so I would love to answer any questions that you all have about Pear Deck. It could be about what we've covered today, or even other questions you might have about Pear Deck. Yes, of course, anytime, Holly. Yeah, our Pear Deck 201, I think it's a really fun one to dive into, because then you get to see there's just so much more that you can do with Pear Deck. It's not just about making interactive slides, it's connecting with our students as well and creating that equity in the classroom and equity of voice.
Yeah, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, to anybody watching, you can, if you want to practice, we at Heartland, your instruction, our digital learning coach, we'd be happy to help you practice or do it, because it's always a little frightening, isn't it, Brittany, to do it that first time? And even as I'm watching, I'm like, am I going to remember where that button is? And, so I think it's really important to you have support. You're not alone out there. And some of you have great colleagues and instructional coaches in your building too. So I think that practicing a few times and having a student do it is a great way to do it that first time too, with some of these advanced features.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And if, like you were saying, if you are feeling slightly overwhelmed by all of this, you could always log into your Pear Deck homepage here, click this create a lesson button, and then just think about one thing that you want to do. Like maybe we're going to use it for a bell ringer, or it's our exit ticket. And once you click that create a lesson button, it takes you right to Google Slides. It gives you 3 steps on how you're going to open up that add-on, how you can select a template slide that we have already made, and then how you'll launch that. And then that's it. And you get to practice utilizing that teacher dashboard. And it's like a slow process, you can just start with one. And then if you start to get the hang of that, maybe you add in 2 interactive slides on a presentation you've already created, and so on and so forth. I think it's just easing yourself into it. You don't have to jump into the deep end, I promise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, baby steps.
Yes.
Like our keynote today, Jake said, just one step at a time. So I think if you're in the 201 though, they probably got the basics, and So I'm
Yes.
thinking, okay, how do I do like the student takeaways? What if a
Mhm.
student is absent? What am I going to do? I can only
Yes.
publish that once. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things to think through as you, but just one step at a time is great advice.
Yeah.
So,
And then thinking about the point you just made too, if you do have a student that's absent, my biggest recommendation would be either just to keep the session open, so don't end it just yet. And you could always grab that link to share out with your students, or switch it over into student pace mode. And the student that was absent, maybe you can send that link to them, or however you communicate to them, or maybe when they finally come back to class, you could just give them this asynchronous independent work to do for that presentation. And then once they complete it, once they've signed in and completed it, you can end the session from there and then publish those that reflect and review and those student takeaways.
that's a great idea. Because
Mhm.
I could see like just posting it. I am a Google Classroom believer. So you could put it in Google Classroom.
Yep.
And then if they miss a day, go to Google Classroom, you'll see our Pear Deck. I mean, because that always drove me nuts. When you have 120 kids like I did, oh my gosh, 2 to 5 to 10 were absent. Okay, who hasn't? Then it's on the Pear Deck. It
Yep.
would be in your Google Classroom, and you could say, it says here, can our students use Pear Deck for their own presentation, or is it
Mhm.
just free for teachers?
So if students have access to, if they have their like the same domain that is within Iowa, the AEAs, then yes, they do have access to Pear Deck Premium. At a baseline, students can create, even if they don't have access to Premium, they still can create Pear Deck lessons. So they can create an account on Pear Deck, and then they can just jump into Google Slides and create these Pear Deck lessons. So I think it's a really fun tool, and it's a great way to encourage students to think about how they can make their own like in-class presentations more engaging.
Yeah.
But that's definitely up to y'all and up to your discretion.
Carlene, I love that. My mind didn't go there. So thank you for that question. Like, okay, yeah, because oftentimes I'd ask my students to give presentations. They could really make it interactive. I can see. Yeah, I think and it's pretty easy. Kids would figure it out.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Tammy,
I
I'm totally with you. I'm going to rewatch it too.
Yeah, the 201 is packed with a lot, and I always feel bad because I'm like, I feel like I'm throwing out so much information, but yes, that's why we record these so that people can rewatch it for sure.
And then if you don't know it's there, you have to know what's there. And then you can go
Yes.
back and pick which
Mhm.
feature is going to be. If you didn't know it was there, you can go back and try it. So
Yep.